Hey guys, it's Sarah. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is another DIY Mickey ear tutorial, and I'm going to be showing you guys how I made this set of Mary Poppins inspired ears. I have lots of options on this particular set with different details that you can add, and I show you how to make all of it. These are also two-sided, so this first side you're seeing is her traditional arrival outfit, and then on the back I did decide to do her Jolly Holiday outfit. So if you guys love Mary Poppins or want to see how I made these ears, then just keep watching. Starting out with the Jolly Holiday outfit side of the ears, I found this white satin fabric on clearance at Hobby Lobby. I'm sure you can pick a fabric similar to this from pretty much anywhere that sells fabric, but using the largest template, which is the ear cutting line template, you're only going to need to trace 2 of these if you're doing both outfits. If you're doing all Jolly Holiday, then you'll need 4, but I did accidentally trace 4 because I kind of forgot that I was doing double-sided ears. But again, you'll only need 2, and then you can go ahead and cut those out. I am using a rotary blade and a cutting mat, but of course you can just use scissors if that's what you have on hand. I prefer my ears to be more flat, so I'll be using felt as a liner inside of them, and I'm going to be using that same largest template to trace just 2 of these onto the felt. You'll only need 2 if you're doing the double-sided design. Again, I don't know why, but I forgot. And then for the inside of the ear, you're going to trace the smallest template, which is the foam and batting template, 4 times onto cardboard and cut those out as well. So when you are done, you should have 2 of the white silky fabric, 2 of the white felt, and 4 of the cardboard. Next, we'll start assembling, so laying down the felt first and then the cardboard on top. You're going to take your hot glue gun and just do a small line of hot glue at the top center of the ear first, and then fold over your felt and tap it down into the glue. This little silicone finger cover is from Dollar Tree in case you guys are looking for them. It does come in a 3-pack. And then you're just going to continue with your glue all the way around the ear, leaving the bottom open because I personally like to do the bottom last. I think it gives you the smoothest lines on your fabric. After that, you're going to lay down your silky fabric and then put what you have on top of it and do the same method as small line of hot glue, fold over the satin fabric and tap that down on top of the felt, and then work your way around the sides of the ears as well, again saving the bottom for last. To close up the bottom, you are going to snip off if you have too much excess fabric sticking out, and then do a line of hot glue, but normally I snip my fabric in half. As you can see here, it's actually split down the middle because I think it's easier to fold the fabric over and avoid puckering if you cut it in the middle and then fold over 1/2 at a time. And then you would be left with half of one ear, so you'll repeat these steps again on the other side so that you'll be able to glue them together and create a solid ear. So next I'm taking this red sequin fabric, and this is going to be the bottom of one side of the Jolly Holiday side. So I'm just marking the sides of my ear and the bottom so that I make sure that I get a piece that is the proper fit. You might want to cut a little bit wider than you initially mark, just to make sure that you have enough fabric to glue on. If you cut right on the line, then you probably won't have enough fabric. So as you can see here, my lines are, you know, a little bit more inset than where I actually cut, and now I have enough excess fabric to glue onto the ear. So I'm just doing a line of hot glue and then using that silicone finger cover because that sequin fabric, the glue comes straight through it. You will burn your finger if you're not careful. I'm just tapping that down into the hot glue on the sides first, and then I will close up the bottom as well. Again, snipping off any excess if it's creating any type of weird puckering in your fabric. And then just gently folding over the bottom into the glue. So now we have this really cute little half and half look for 1/2 of the Jolly Holiday side, and you can see I have this huge pile of trim in front of me because I will be using white lace trim. And honestly, I'm going to work through the design like an on camera with you guys because it did take me a few tries to get what I wanted exactly. Now before attaching any lace, I have this super, super skinny white ribbon. It is so tiny, but it creates those really nice little pinstripes like she has on her corset in the movie. So I'm going to cut 3 of these and then glue them down on top of the sequin fabric, and then also fold them over onto the back of the ear, if that makes sense. Oh, look at that. I did not do 3. So it looks like I actually have 4 of these. I'm sorry, you guys. So this part, you want to make sure that you're not doing too much hot glue, because it will get really messy if you squeeze out too much hot glue, because this ribbon is so thin, it's really not going to cover it up well. So just do a very skinny line of hot glue exactly where you want this trim to be, and then just tap it down into the glue. Again, I really encourage you guys to pick up silicone finger covers, not just so you don't burn yourself, but also the glue tends to get less messy with that, as opposed to just using your bare finger. I'm just going to continue attaching these little lines down the ear. And this is what it looks like once they're all attached on the top. Now, obviously we have those little strings hanging down on the bottom, and we are just going to glue those onto the back of the ear where no one will see them. So just using hot glue again, I'm going to put down some hot glue and then just fold over those ribbons and tap them down into the glue. Next, we're going to go back to that lace trim. So I did cut a piece that seemed to be about the right size, and then I'm just doing, again, a thin line of hot glue and tapping down that lace trim onto the hot glue. Now the sides of the lace were sticking out a little bit too much, so I am going to add some hot glue to the inside of the ear, fold over the trim lace, and then tap it down into the glue just to give it a more finished edge. Moving on to the next lace trim, this one's going to go down the center of this design. All of these trims, I believe, are from Hobby Lobby if you guys are looking for these exact trims. But I'm just adding a thin line of hot glue down at the bottom and then tapping my lace down. I did decide to double layer it because I thought that it looked nicer and more ornate this way. So I'm just going to lay down 3 strips of it and glue them into place. I did start with the center one, and then the other 2 pieces that I'm adding went underneath the center one if you're wanting to do it exactly as I did it. So I started with a dot of hot glue, and now I'm going in with a thin line of hot glue and tapping down the lace onto it. And just to make sure that the side pieces of lace don't rip off, I am going to also fold them up, but add a little dot of hot glue any place where they just needed to be a little bit more secure. And then I will fold over the tops and glue that on the back side of the ear. And this is what it looks like so far. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more just so you guys can see this detailing, but I am also using this other white trim, and I want to call this like a braided trim. Again, this is also from Hobby Lobby, and I decided to use this to line the top of that lace overlay that's going over the red portion. I just thought, again, it gave it more of a finished look. I use so many different types of trim on this ears, and I know it's a lot, guys, but it's also like what best emulated her costume. So just adding a thin line of hot glue, I tapped down that trim as well. Okay, so next is pearls. I have these flat back pearls already on hand, and I did decide to use the white ones and not the ivory ones to create almost like little buttons on the blouse. And I'm just going to be doing 3 of them and hot gluing them into place. If you have one of those jewel pickup tools, it would be so nice to have to do this. And this is what it looked like all finished. Okay, moving on to the other side. So I wanted the other side to replicate the red, but in opposite, if that makes sense. I want it to look like the bottom of the corset going onto the skirt, whereas the first one that we just made is more of the top of the corset and the blouse. So I'm kind of trying to line up my red sequin fabric to create a cohesive shape, if that makes sense. It's more like a triangle, but I am just kind of freehanding this to get it to look the way that I want. And then just using my rotary tool, I'm trimming that up. So this is just going to get glued in the center of the ear at the top. And then we're going to be adding a lot of details. So just starting with a dot of hot glue at the bottom, I'm just going to gently tap that down. Really the goal is just to get this to stay in place, because all of the other little details we're going to add onto it should help secure it to the ear even further. So starting with details, going back to that braided white trim that we just used a second ago, I'm going to cut this to the right size and create almost like a lining on the bottom of this V shape. I did want it to be one solid piece instead of having to cut it into two pieces and having a broken seam. So I'm just starting on one side and tapping it down into the hot glue, and then I'm going to hold it in place and fold it into the glue on the other side. And then I will fold over the top and glue that on the inside of the ear. Next, going in with a red super skinny ribbon, exactly like that white really skinny ribbon that we used earlier, I am going to use this to create really tiny little red bows. This was definitely a little bit tricky and took me some time to get right, but I'm just tying them into bows and making sure that they are pulled really tight and that they're even on both sides. I did have really long, I don't know what to call them, like legs on the bows, because I knew that I could trim it off once I got it correct with the loops. I also played around with this design a little bit. I had two bows at the bottom, and then I looked at doing one bow in the center at the top as well. I also pulled back out that white lace and tried it a few different ways. I am going to speed through this, but still let you guys see it just in case you like that design better. But ultimately, I did decide just to do two small bows on the bottom. I am going to add pearls on top of these bows, so I'm just doing the tiniest dot of hot glue on the back of the bow and then gently placing it down onto the ear, and then I will do another really tiny dot of hot glue and attach a pearl to the center of the bow. And then I'll repeat this on the other side. Once I got to this point, I did decide to add that third bow back up at the top. It was really hard to make up my mind on this design. And then again, adding a pearl to the center of the bow. While looking at this portion of the ear, I realized that I didn't have symmetry with all of the little white pinstripes from, quote, the top of the corset from earlier. So I'm just doing really thin lines of hot glue and then adding on that white ribbon to emulate the other ear more symmetrically, if that makes sense. And then I'm just going to fold over the top and hot glue it down. Again, I know this is kind of nitpicky, but I really wanted it to look like it was one piece. Does that make sense? And now we're going to move on to the other side of the ears, which is her just normal outfit that she arrives in on her first day. For this side, I'm going to be using this navy blue kind of velour velvety fabric that I had on hand. I actually did a Rapunzel lantern ear tutorial with this fabric, so if you end up getting it and you want to use it for another project, you can use it to make those ears as well. But I'm just doing the same method of tracing 2 of the largest template onto this fabric on the wrong side, meaning on the back. I did have to use a Sharpie because it was the only thing that showed up on this fabric because it was so dark. Now I'm going to show you guys I'm cutting out the cardboard again, but I did already cut out the cardboard. I also already cut out the felt, and I'm just going to repeat the exact same steps that I showed you guys at the beginning of this tutorial with the white fabric. So in order not to make this tutorial a million years long, I'm not going to repeat all of that within the video. You can just rewind back and watch it again if you need to. For this side of ears, I was absolutely determined to add a spoonful of sugar, and I have this ginormous bag of Epsom salts, so I thought that this would be perfect to create a little sugar spoon. Now, I picked up this pack of dessert spoons from Dollar Tree, and it's awesome because it's $1.25 and you get a bunch of them, which meant I got to trial and error because, oh my gosh, did this take me forever to figure out how to do it. I am going to speed this up way more than I normally do because took a while. So first I did hot glue and I dipped it in Epsom salt and just smushed it down, but I kept finding that the hot glue just kept peeling off of the spoon. So then I tried Elmer's glue because I was like, maybe that'll work. And I put the Epsom salts on and it just didn't really work because Epsom salts dissolve and glue is liquid and a lot of water, so it didn't look right and I hated it. And so then I was like, oh, I know, I'm making these for Erika. Erika loves pearls, so I'll put E6000 on the spoon and then I will hand pearl the spoon. So I put like a million little pearls all over this spoon, and it took a really long time and it was very pretty, but it did not look like sugar. So I'm going to show it anyway because I did it, but I don't suggest it. And this is what it looked like. I did not use it. So then I went in with E6000 and tried E6000 and Epsom salt, hoping that that would work. The only thing that I will say is that you can't put too thick of a layer on because then the glue can't dry. So I kind of just sprinkled it on here and smushed it into the glue with my fingers, and then it looked good. It looked really, really good at that point. Now, these were the 2 versions I was kind of going between, and I really did prefer the Epsom salts, but I wanted it to be thicker, so after letting it dry overnight, I went back in with E6000 and added more glue and more Epsom salts, and got the look that I wanted. So depends how dedicated you are to this set of ears, you guys, but this was absolutely the best method. I tried several, as you've seen. So a layer of glue, Epsom salts, let it dry overnight, and then repeat those steps and you will get a nice spoonful of sugar for your ears. Again, just reminding you guys, E6000 is not like hot glue. It really does need about 24 hours to fully dry and set. So now going back to the ears, I have already made both sides of that blue velvet fabric using the cardboard felt fabric method that I use, and then I'm going to go in and start detailing these. So using that same white fabric that we used on the Jolly Holiday side, I just did a rough sketch out of basically a triangular shape that goes all the way from the top of the ear to the bottom of the ear. But I made my fabric extra long because I knew that the seam would be really ugly. So I wanted to make sure that I could glue it on to the cardboard on the inside of the ear as opposed to anywhere that could possibly be visible. So I'm just adding some glue on the back of the ear and then tapping down that white fabric at the top first, and then I'm going to let that dry a little bit and stretch down my fabric and glue it at the bottom as well. You don't really need to glue the sides because we're going to add a bunch of trim and accents on it to further adhere this fabric down. I also do realize that that purple disappearing ink quote unquote marker is totally showing through, but again, we're going to cover that up with trim, so it won't be a very big deal. I did get a really weird pucker in my white fabric, so I did have to reattach it. And I'm just showing you guys that because honestly, not everything goes right the first time. So now that it's attached and I don't have any weird like wrinkles or anything, I'm taking that same white lace trim from earlier and adding this to the sides of the white part of the fabric. So lace trim on the sides of the white. And then I did make the trim a little bit extra long so that I could fold my edges over and put them on the inside of the ear. And then I'll repeat this step on the other side, trying to create kind of like her little blouse inside of the blue blazer. And now that we have the sides done, we're going to start working on the center. So going in with that white double-sided lacy trim, again, we used this one earlier. I'm going to lay that down the center, but before I do that, I wanted to finish up the edges. So I'm taking the braided white trim from earlier, and I'm going to lay that on top of this lace. I just don't like how the edge of this lace trim looks, so that's what the braided trim is going in to cover up. So same method, thin line of hot glue, tapping down that braided trim, and then folding over the edges onto the inside. To attach the double-sided lace trim to the center, I am going to kind of taco fold it, if that makes sense, because I didn't want the frilliness of the lace to get glued down all the way. So I'm doing a thin line of hot glue and then making sure that the glue only touches the center of the trim because I like the extra popped up texture of it. So once I have that laid down, same thing, I'm going to fold over all of those edges and glue them into the center of the ear. I do want to point out that if any of your trims are just ridiculously long, go ahead and cut them down because it will stop your ear from getting too bulky. Also, if you have a trim that is fraying really badly, you can take a lighter and burn the edges, and that will stop the trim from fraying, but obviously be super careful because, you know, fire. Bringing back in that super thin red ribbon that we used earlier on the other side, I'm going to tie a little bow because she does have almost like a little bow tie at the top of her blouse for this outfit. I do cut the little legs a little bit short because I like how they stick out at this length. And then I'm just going to do a small dot of hot glue and tap down the bow into the glue. I'm not going to add a pearl on top of this bow because it doesn't look like her costume if I do that, if that makes sense. But I am going to add little pearl buttons down the center of the blouse like I did earlier. And this is what this one looks like, all done. So now we're going to move on to the other side. Now this side is a little bit easier in different ways. Before we do that, I am lint rolling just all of the hot glue strings off of the velvet because unfortunately they do get a little stuck in there. I debated including this because I do not end up using this on the ears that I made, but I still wanted to show you guys just in case you really like it. I did end up making Mary's little hat out of felt. So I'm starting with just some craft foam and I'm tracing out a rough sketch of what the hat looks like. And then I'm going to cut this out and use this as my template. But as you can see here, I absolutely hated how I drew it the first time, so I'm trying again. Now, using a super stiff black felt, I'm just going to trace this using a silver Sharpie, and then I will cut it out of felt. I played around with a few ways to decorate this. One was by pulling these little red berries off of a Christmas decor piece that I have, because I didn't know where else to get like little red berries. This is what it looks like, but they are styrofoam and they're definitely super fragile. And then I have these are not real. I have fake daisies that I thought also were really cute because her hat has little daisies coming off of it. And then I have these even tinier little white flowers that I thought might work. I realized I had these little daisy buttons on hand, and I thought that that was really cute for this hat being flat. And I liked the scale of the buttons more than the actual flowers. I also just thought that it looked a little bit higher quality. So I played around with it for a little while, but I did end up preferring the buttons and the little berry combination to anything else. I did want to see if I could make one of these daisies kind of popped up, so I took a little bit of green floral wire and tried to hot glue it into the hole of the button and then set it off to the side to dry. After looking at some reference photos, I saw that there were also these little tiny bluish purple flowers on the hat, so I pulled off the tiniest little buds off of this faux flower that I had on hand, luckily, and just kind of pulled off the petals and plucked them so that I could hot glue them even tighter so that they would be smaller, because obviously I'm working with a super small scale of this hat. But just making it super, super tiny and then using hot glue to kind of reinforce it and make sure that it stays super small. I glued down one of the daisies and a few of the berries, and then I am adding these little purple petals. Now, I said I didn't end up using this hat, but I will show you guys kind of what it looks like with the ears after I assemble them. So going back to the other side of the blue outfit, I picked up this yellow, what's it called, tape measure from Hobby Lobby because I wanted to create her little measuring tape on the other side. So I am going to have to cut it, which makes me a little bit sad just because it's so cute. But I played around with it just how I wanted it to lay. The hardest part about this part is actually writing the words on here because it's so small, and unfortunately my pen kept running, so it kept looking smeared, and it did take me quite a few tries to get this part right. So I cut it down super small. I did leave the little metal end on one of the edges because I liked how it looked finished. And then using a reference photo, I am just doing my best to draw in the little swirly design that's on the tape measure and then writing practically perfect in every way. I did use a super fine tip Sharpie for this. There might be another pen that works better because, like I said, this tape measure has a very, very minor ribbed texture to it, and it kept causing the pen ink to run before it could fully dry. So I did have to use alcohol to remove it a few times and try again. Maybe try to use different types of pens to test it out to see if you guys can find a pen that works better. And then I did take this little protractor, is that what this is called? I don't know, this little ruler thing to go in and add little notches for the measuring tape. The other little piece of advice I have for you guys is make sure that you allow the ink to fully dry before trying to glue this onto the ear, because that did mess me up one time as well. I just was trying to work too fast and the ink wasn't dry yet. So I am folding over the tape measure in a way that I like, and then I'm just going to glue down the ends. So this is actually going to have kind of a 3D effect and pop up a little bit. So just adding a little bit of hot glue to the bottom first, I'm just tapping that down onto the ear, and then I'm going to fold the tape measure over and try to create a pretty defined crease in it so that I can glue down the top as well. And then this is this side of the ear all done. Now, I haven't glued the ears to the headband yet, but I just wanted to show you guys the little hat. It is super duper cute, but what I really wanted with this set of ears was to only have to do one bow, and I knew that on the Jolly Holiday side, I was going to insist on having a red sparkly bow, so I thought that if I did the red sequin bow, I would be able to just use one bow for both sides, and that kind of eliminated the hat. So next we're going to go ahead and attach the halves of ears to each other. So instead of doing the two tops together, I'm actually going to do the white top with the blue bottom, if that makes sense, and then the opposite on the other side. So using the tape measure one, I'm attaching that to the white ear that has more of the red sequin fabric on it, and I'm just going to apply a pretty good amount of hot glue and then firmly press those down together. And do the same thing on the other side. When you're putting the hot glue on the cardboard, I always try not to get too close to the edge or use too much because I don't want it to ooze out and get all over the ear. When you're firmly holding these together, just hold it long enough to where you no longer feel the glue being warm, because that usually means the glue's had time to cool and set fully. For the edge of the ear, I decided to use the white braided trim from earlier, and I'm just going to wrap this all the way around the ear using hot glue. So just putting hot glue in small sections at a time, you're going to wrap the braided trim around and tap it down into the hot glue as you go. Be sure not to do too much hot glue at once because it does make it trickier to work with, because the glue sometimes will dry faster than you can work. Once you're done, you can cut off the excess trim, and then because this trim was fraying so badly, I took my lighter just to sear the edges and make sure that they don't fray. And this is one complete ear. After you've repeated those steps on both sides, we can go ahead and start attaching to the headband. Now, I did have a gap on this side, unfortunately. I must not have cut my cardboard precisely enough, but that's okay. We will make it work. To make sure that the ear sits flat on the headband, I cut a very small piece of white craft foam to create kind of a filler between the white ear and the headband. So just making sure that it's sized properly, and then I'm going to add some hot glue to the bottom of the white side only, and then I will tap down the craft foam onto the hot glue. Again, this shouldn't really be visible, but it creates a better seam between the ear and the headband. So next, using my ear spacing template, I am going to make sure that I have my ears in the right place, and then adding hot glue to the bottom of the ear, I will firmly press it down onto the headband and hold it in place for at least 30 seconds because you want to make sure that glue fully sets and dries. You'll repeat that step, and then once you have both sides attached, I did decide to add a trim to the bottom of the ear that I had to add the craft foam on, just because I wanted to make sure that it looked nice and finished. So going in with that white braided trim again, I'm just going to glue this on the bottom of the ear. I'm also going to do the same on the other side because I didn't like how this ear felt a little bit loose on the headband. It just didn't seem like it attached very well, so this is reinforcing it to the headband. I repeated these steps on the other side as well, just to make sure that the design stayed symmetrical. The last thing we have to make for this set of ears is the bow, so using that red sequin fabric, I'm going to cut a strip that is about 12 to 13 inches long and 6 inches wide. And then this sequin fabric really can't be a bow on its own, it'll be too floppy, so you're going to want a piece of red felt to put in the center. I cut a piece of felt that was 4 inches by 5 inches, and that's going to be the center insert. Starting with the side, I'm going to do a line of hot glue and then fold over the fabric and tap it down into the hot glue. And repeat this on the other side. This is going to create a false hemline to where you don't have to sew it, but the fabric won't fall apart. For the bottom of the bow, before you fold it over and glue it, you should do a little tack of glue on each corner just to make sure that your fabric doesn't buckle, and then you will fold it over onto the felt and glue it down. And then you'll repeat those steps on the top of the bow as well. I do prefer to do just dots of hot glue as opposed to long lines with this particular fabric. And then I actually learned this really cool trick from Erika, where if you accordion fold your fabric in place and then you take a little clear hair elastic, it can hold it and keep its bow shape while you glue your center trim around it. I am going to be using that white braided trim again, but I also pulled out that double-sided lace trim as well. And I'm going to start with this one and then put the braided trim on top just to add some extra detailing. Once you have your trim cut to size, you can just add a dot of hot glue on the bottom of the bow and tap the trim down into the glue, wrap it all the way around the bow and glue it back in place. And then I'm going to put that braided trim right down the center on top of the lace one. For this particular set of ears, I really wanted to glue the bow directly into the center of the headband so that all Erika had to do was pull the sides of the bow to flip the bow around no matter which way she wanted to wear it. And that was partially why I decided not to use that little hat that I made. So just adding a dot of hot glue, I attached the bow to the center of the headband, and now you can just flip the bow around from side to side. I did take the little spoonful of sugar and inserted it through the center of the bow, but it is removable. I did not glue it into place because I also thought that it looked really cute on this side of the ear, and I kind of wanted to leave it up to Erika which side she wanted it on. But whichever way you guys decide to do these ears, thank you so much for watching this tutorial and supporting my channel. Please subscribe if you haven't already and give this video a big thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.